Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Bring Me the Horizon, Posthuman NeX-GEn. And here I thought this was just going to be a long overdue EP, not their longest album, not counting music to listen to, that thing. But even though I have had a tempestuous relationship with Bring Me the Horizon, the buzz around this project at least had me intrigued. Apparently internally there had been a lot of rumored infighting surrounding the project's direction between the heavier pivot from the last Posthuman album to something a little more accessible, closer to borderline pop-punk or emo, which apparently got so bad it led to the departure of Jordan Fish, their keyboardist and more importantly their longtime producer, since that's the spirit. That, alongside the discourse that even among fans they seem to call this a mess, just one they liked because of what it was revealing, or just tolerated because it's been 4 years since a new project, it had me worried about this, and for good reason, because this is the Bring Me the Horizon album that finally wore out any patience and goodwill I was giving them. What's most immediate with this album is that the infighting surrounding the band's direction is sprayed violently all over the place, as despite the painfully weak structure of the OST instrumental segments full of jumbled samples, this is a band that's being torn violently between a closer return to the metalcore, even their early deathcore roots, versus a jumbled blur of sanitized pop-punk emo, and even a hyperpop that feels years behind the curve. It's not just that this plays havoc on any attempt to establish consistent tones, but the loss of Fish brings out the worst of both sounds. Where on the first Posthuman, I had issues with the overmixed gummy layers of synth that was slammed to the front alongside the riffs, leaving the entire groove section smothered at the back. Here, the riffs have no consistent body, the drums are painfully underpowered when they're not slammed through these weedy program beats, and any interesting bass lines might as well be gone, leaving a full force approach with even weaker dynamics and feeling incredibly compressed and top heavy. And when the mix is so oversaturated with glassy splashes and pitch shifting and all the synthetic layers that are dumped onto Ollie Sykes' voice and the borderline electronic core glitch that was kinda tacky 15 years ago, the rock elements start running together remarkably fast over an extended runtime. For a band that's trying so damn hard to feel anthemic and play for the live audience, there's just little in the way of distinctive crescendos. For all the poppier tones, the melodic core can start feeling very recycled, down to Darkside lifting elements from Fall Out Boy. Now, I'm on the fence whether or not it's worse for the heavier passages. Fish at least stuck around to co-produce that collab with Underoath, A Bullet With My Name on It, which is at least credible compared to Amen, that somehow manages to waste both Lil Uzi Vert and Glassjaw in this over-caffeinated squealing mess, or that utter disaster with AURORA, Limousine, which does nothing to accentuate her quasi-mystical vibes and features some of the most embarrassing lyrics on the album, and that is saying a lot. Speaking of which, the content. Putting aside how any conceptual framework feels shaky at best, a fight between the cult of reprogramming and uniformity with the more raw, degenerate masses, with some decent framing but very lazy and basic occultism, the majority of it devolves into Sykes' usual targets for his rage: betrayal, unhealthy and obsessive relationships, struggles within therapy, relentless nihilistic self-loathing, where it feels like there's a grab bag of familiar iconography that's been smeared over for anthemic impact, but little depth or exploration, made all the worse by every snippet of studio dialogue left in that exposes all the cynical artifice. And, okay, you know what? I'm willing to accept that the wild tonal shifts, the raging inconsistency, the melodrama ramped up to 11, it might make sense in some framing around dealing with mental health struggles. But when you combine a lack of coherent progression in the theme, lyricism that feels vivid but painfully basic, and every moment that feels very obviously choreographed for the stadium sing-along, it just becomes kind of hard for me to take it seriously, especially when they fumble the execution so hard for any sense of fun. And look, there are some salvageable moments. Top 10 statues that cried blood, it had the kinetic energy to sell a decent hook, even if that breakdown felt painfully overmixed. The Underoath collab, again, credible heaviness, thank Fish for some of the production. And Die For You manages to tear itself out of the downward spiral in the content with a credible riff and a good guitar solo. It's probably the track I like most on the album, but as someone who's never been sold on Bring Me the Horizon, including having seen them live multiple times at festivals, this is more scattershot volume than impact. It's throwing everything at the wall and praying for something that sticks with a half-baked concept that feels too big to fail. At least with Sempiternal and That's the Spirit, I could grasp at the solid fundamentals even if they weren't my thing. This wants to be framed as NeX-GEn, but I gotta say, it feels dated, incoherently chasing trends, and kinda woeful in the execution. It's not the worst album I've heard this year, but it's mediocre at best and really kinda bad at worst. I'd say skip it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, and subscribe. Look, I try to give this band a proper chance. I've been trying for, well, the past 5 or 6 years, and I've seen them live. I want to actually get behind this, but the production really lost it for me, and the more I tried to delve into the content, the less I was impressed. I mean, it happens. There's definitely fans of this who will appreciate the genre pile-up, but I'm not one of them. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, or just yelling at me on my Discord, or getting projects on my schedule going forward, link to my Patreon is right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, I understand. The option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.